This video takes a look at the OSD on-screen display menu system of the Samsung C27F591FD, also referred to with just an F at the end or various other regional suffixes, or indeed by its series number CF591. The OSD is controlled by a joystick or jog button at the rear of the monitor towards the right side. If you just twiddle that upwards or downwards, you can quickly adjust the brightness, contrast or sharpness of the monitor. If you twiddle it left or right, you can adjust the volume of the integrated speakers or anything connected to the 3.5mm jack. You can also press down there to mute the speakers if you'd like. If you press it in, the little quick menu comes up which has various options. To the left there's a source select button which will just cycle through the various sources of the monitor to allow you to manually select an input. That's the return if you just press the middle bit, or you just press the button again. The option to the right there, iSaver mode. If you activate this, as explored in the review, it brings a much warmer look to the image. It cuts out a lot of blue light. It's a low blue light setting essentially, which is good for relaxing viewing in the evening in particular, where you don't want to bombard your eyes with lots of high energy blue light. It also massively reduces the contrast. The contrast ratio drops from sort of somewhere around 3000 to 1 to under 100 to 1. It's, this isn't an accident, it's not a bug, it's designed to do this to sort of minimize the amount of time your eyes spend accommodating to changing light levels from the monitor. So some people would find that more relaxing. The top option there, menu, is the main menu system of the OSD. The first bit there, picture, allows you to change various settings such as select a magic bright image preset, and as usual on modern Samsung monitors there is a little thing to the right, a little text box to the right which tells you exactly what each option does, which is quite handy. So there are various different settings there. Some of them are explored in the review, and I only tend to use custom. I like to customize things. Basic color as well, not one I use, but it's an sRGB emulation mode because, as explored in the review, this monitor has a fairly wide color gamut. And that cuts the saturation down a bit if you want to do that. You can adjust the brightness. That's done in increments of 1 as usual, so between 0 and 100. Contrast, same between 0 and 100, increments of 1. Sharpness, it's controlled in increments of 4 between 0 and 100, 60 being the default and optimal in my view. Colour, which allows you to manually adjust the red, green and blue colour channels. Alternatively, you can select one of the preset colour tone settings, and Warm 2, which I explore in the review, is to be considered a low blue light setting, a bit like iSaver mode, except it doesn't reduce the contrast anywhere near as much, but it does reduce the blue light output from the monitor very effectively. There's a slightly weaker warm setting called Warm 1, and various other settings. There are also 3 different gamma modes on the monitor, explored in the review. Magic upscale feature, and what this does is it increases the sharpness of the display. If you're running it at the native resolution as I am now, there's no need to do this. It doesn't make the sharpness better, it artificially enhances it. It's actually, as the name suggests, Magic Upscale. It's designed for when you're running the monitor at lower resolutions, and it's using upscaling, and may produce better results if you're doing that. It's not something I've really tested extensively, running this monitor at lower resolutions myself, so I've got no need to do that. But Mode 1 basically sharpens the image in a reasonably subtle way. Mode 2 has a bit of a stronger sharpening filter applied. So that's a bit of flexibility you've got there. HDMI black level. That's greyed out unless you're using HDMI and specific colour signals are being used, so don't worry too much about that. Where it does apply, it's explored in the review. iSaver mode, I've already gone through. Game mode, which I explored in the review, and I don't want to say too much about at the moment. It's something I've seen sort of cursing Samsung monitors for a while now. I think they first introduced it with their E series last year, possibly actually in the D series the year before that. It just massively oversaturates colours. It clips shades, reduces your shade variety massively. It makes things look artificial, not at all how the game developers will have intended. And it's really something I don't see the utility in at all on a monitor like this. But it's there anyway if you want to use it. And I should also mention there are two distinctive settings when you activate it, on and always on. If you have game mode on and you switch the monitor off, then turn it back on again, game mode should be disabled. Whereas if you select always on, it'll remain on even when you've cycled the power of the monitor off then on again. So response time setting, again explored in the review, standard, faster and fastest. And a few options greyed out there as they only apply to VGA or analog connections. Various on-screen display settings. You can enable or disable a transparency effect for the OSD. You can change the position on the screen, change the language that it's displayed in, and change the idle timeout period. So how long the menu will remain after the last button press before it disappears. You can of course exit at any time, as it says return there, by just pressing left on the OSD a couple of times. System has various quite useful settings. First off, there's sound, and that allows you to change the volume of the integrated speakers. It allows you to change the sound mode. It slightly changes the sort of equalizer a bit, so some of these are a bit more bassy than others. I quite like the music mode. I mean, these integrated speakers aren't amazing, but they're actually reasonable. They're quite reasonable as far as integrated monitor speakers go, and I feel the music mode is the best. Yep, you can change the volume, select the sound mode, and also change between left channel only, right channel only, or stereo sound output, as it does have stereo speakers. And the speakers are down firing, they're just underneath the bottom bezel there. FreeSync. This is a feature explored in the review, and it can be enabled if you have a certain AMD graphics card. There are two different settings there, other than off. One is standard engine, the other is ultimate engine, and these both have slightly different bases of operation, or the sort of lowest frequency that will be supported with FreeSync. So the standard engine will give you a variable refresh rate range of between 58 and 75 Hz, whereas Ultimate Engine gives you a bit more flexibility. It'll go down to 48 Hz, and again the upper end is 75 Hz. There are no noticeable negative implications of running the Ultimate Engine versus Standard Engine, so if you are using FreeSync, you've got that capability on your graphics card, then I would recommend the Ultimate Engine option here. Eco Saving Plus, this reduces the monitor brightness by a set amount. The low setting actually means it is a low energy saving, so it doesn't really change the brightness much. It actually sets it to something that's brighter than the 58 I was using myself anyway. High, which makes the screen a bit dimmer, so that's a higher energy saving. And Auto, and what that does is it takes whatever brightness you've got the monitor set to before enabling the Eco Saving Plus mode, and then it sets it to 10% lower than that. Unless of course you've got the brightness set to 0, because it can't go any dimmer than that. There's an off timer feature, and this is actually enabled by default. What this does, after a set amount of time between 1 hour and 23 hours, default being 4 hours, a little box pops up on the screen saying that the monitor's been idle and it's going to turn off unless you press a button, so unless you sort of use the OSD controller. It's just to help save power if you actually are away from the computer, but I know many people would just like to leave that off, which of course is an option as well. PC/AV modes, just compatibility for older games consoles and that sort of thing. It's not something I've actually tested, but there's a DVI PC mode for HDMI as well that possibly would get around having to adjust the colour signal, which is pretty simple to simple to do in modern graphics drivers anyway. So not something I'd worry about too much, but it's kind of quite interesting to see that little mode there. As you can tell, it's the first time I've actually seen this whilst doing the video. Source detection, so you can manually select the input source using the cycle I showed you before, or you can have it automatically select the input. Key repeat time, that just changes how the buttons behave when they're pressed, the OSD behaves. So just acceleration, 1 second, 2 second, no repeat, don't worry too much about all of that. You can change the behaviour of the power LED, which is that little thing there. You can see it's actually off at the moment as my monitor's on, and that's the default behaviour. You can instead have the LED so it's on when the monitor's on, if you like to stare at a little blue power LED, or perhaps more to the point you don't want it to be on when the monitor's on standby. I should mention standby doesn't just mean when you've turned off your computer and there's no longer a signal going to the monitor. You can actually turn the monitor off, or what most people would call turning the monitor off, by selecting the lower little option on the quick menu here, power off. So if I select that, the monitor is, as most people would call, off, but it's actually on standby. It's still drawing power from the mains, and the power button will actually be on there. So, you know, perhaps if you've got this in a bedroom where you're sleeping or something and you don't want the monitor to do that, then select the working option, or make sure you're actually cutting the power off at the mains or whatever. I should also mention that you can't power the monitor off or turn it on to standby by pressing the joystick in and holding it for a few seconds like you can on some monitors. That actually does a factory reset, and that's something I've learnt the hard way because I had customised all of these settings, then I ended up accidentally resetting them to the factory defaults, which was a bit annoying, so don't make that mistake. An alternative way of resetting all the settings is to use the Reset All feature here. Finally, there's an information section, and that gives an extended model code, so you can see what I've been saying about various regional suffixes. There's also an L before the monitor on some extended model codes, but the preferred designation is C27F591FD. The U means it's a European model, my one is, and gives you the serial number, how it's connected, if FreeSync's enabled or not, the resolution that's currently being used, and as they call the optimal mode, so the sort of native full HD 60 Hz of the monitor. And as I explore, if you enable FreeSync, it does actually go up to 72 Hz, and if you're an NVIDIA user, you should be able to set a custom resolution of 72 Hz, no problem. For my testing, my unit didn't go any higher than that, however. So, hope you enjoyed the video. That was the OSD on-screen display menu system of the Samsung C27F591FD. Be sure to check out the full review on PCmonitors.info or the video review on my YouTube channel.